Hi everyone, I'm Liam Eagle. I'm the editor here at the Web Host Industry Review, and I'd like to welcome you all to another one of our WHIR webinars. Today's session is called Prying Open the Cloud with Crowbar and OpenStack, and it's going to feature a discussion that includes Joseph B. George, who is Director of Marketing at Dell, and Rob Hirschfeld, who is Principal Architect at Dell. And we've scheduled for about an hour today, so I'll let Joseph and Rob introduce themselves properly in a moment. But before we go there, I just wanted to take care of a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, questions. We're going to save about 10 minutes at the end of the session for your questions, but you can feel free to submit them throughout the presentation using the submission software, and I'll be keeping an eye on them throughout. As far as actually putting the questions to the presenters, we're just going to save all of that to the very end. If you do ask a question and it doesn't get answered because we run out of time, we will have a record of all the questions that were asked and who they were asked by, so somebody will be able to reach out to you via email or something like that after the fact. Some contact info for Dell is going to be on screen during the Q&A period, so if you have something specific you want to ask about that you don't want to ask necessarily in public or in a sort of public forum like this, you can certainly contact them directly. And of course, there will be a video archive of the webinar. If you want to revisit some of the slides or some of the content, there will be a webinar on the WHIR at thewhir.com/webinars as of early next week, and it'll be right there alongside a lot of our other great past webinars, so you can check those out. Without any further ado, let's get started, and I'll turn things over to Joseph so he can start presenting to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Liam. And I'm just going to do a check. Okay, great. I'm looking on my partner's slide presentation here. Okay, so everybody can see. So thank you, everybody, for joining. My name is Joseph George. I'm the Director of Marketing for Dell Cloud and Data Solutions. And joining me today is my partner in crime on the technical side, Rob Hirschfeld. Hello, everyone. He's a Principal Architect on our cloud solutions. Moving ahead, I'm not going to go into too much detail around who we are. I think we've done a pretty good job of that. But what I do want to pass on is Rob and I have actually been involved in various parts of cloud and emerging technologies like virtualization for a long time. We have some startup experience between us. We have experience doing startups within corporations between us. And if you'd like to follow us on our blogs or on Twitter, those are our handles here. And we'll have that available later today as well. So let's talk about the cloud. I mean, the cloud is this in a lot of ways for a lot of years. Sorry, I think Rob, you're a presenter, so you'll need to. Very much. Switching me over there. I apologize. Yeah, sorry about that. So the cloud's been this nebulous kind of term for a long time around what is it supposed to do. Everybody likes to take their stuff and start slapping cloud stickers on it and say that it's the cloud. What we want to do kind of is a matter-of-fact kind of discussion here. The cloud involves a lot of things, and basically it revolves around customers and users trying to get as much capacity out of the resources that they have, as well as being able to provide their teams with the ability to get a hold of resources for projects they're trying to do in a timely fashion. So that has to do with consolidation and virtualization, but much more than that, it has to do with flexible sourcing. It has to do with dynamic, a lot of things like that, and we're starting to see that more and more customers are understanding the value of that, and we're able to deliver some of that.
I was just laughing. I think you coined a word accidentally, dynormous.
Did I say dynormous? Dynamic. That is actually a really good term there. So what we're hearing from our customers and the team that Rob and I are on. Specifically are trying to service the web hosting customer environment. What we're hearing from them are, look, we understand cloud services, we understand cloud solutions, but here's what we're trying to do. We want to be able to bring something in that's got the right margin envelope, that's going to be able to return our investment really quickly, but the knowledge, the experience on how to build something like that and maintain is what we're looking for. A couple other things that they're looking for is flexibility in features. A lot of the folks that are on this call, we've had various conversations with customers that are here and customers that are like you that don't want a 9-month roadmap for features. They say, I see this specific requirement in my environment, and I'd like to be able to do something about it. I have people on my team who we refer to as DevOps. And we'll talk a little bit about DevOps a little bit later. But from the hosting business and the service provider business, DevOps is huge. It's critical because it gives us the flexibility to be able to meet our customers' needs as quickly as we are able to, and not rely on a third party to be able to do that. And then there's the questions around scale. We can take a look at what analysts are saying and what the press and really just start forecasting around where we think cloud can go. We're seeing public providers, like many that are represented on this call, finding business cases that make sense for actually going out and starting small and scaling. But a lot of the solutions that are out there are not able to scale, and that that it's just going to take a lot of effort and investment that doesn't have a lot of return to be able to get to that point. So that's where we, as a company, started looking at OpenStack. OpenStack is essentially two things. It's a community of over 100 vendors now, and it's actually a stack of technology. It's a fabric made up of open source software, all under Apache 2.0 license, which actually gives a lot of us a lot of freedom to be able to do the things that we want to do commercially. It's important to note that Dell's actually been a part of this community since day one. July 19th of 2010 is when the announcement came from Rackspace and NASA about forming this community. Dell was there on day one, and we were part of a small group of people that were there at the very beginning. And why that's important is that it required some vision at that point. And a lot of folks that are in the same space as we are chose not to get involved at that early stage. But I think the expertise that we had on our team that represented cloud, that had cloud experience, that had real-world customer engagements that were trying to stand up these type of services, we saw a lot of the characteristics that we were looking for in an ideal cloud solution in this stack. Things like massive scalability. NASA and Rackspace, who provided some of the founding code for this, their business is about scale. NASA contains gathers so much data around the universe. They realize they're not in the business of trying to manipulate and manage that data. They're about gathering the data. And Rackspace, obviously one of the bigger hosters that are out there, provided this the storage capabilities. That actually came out of their storage business. So they actually took the capability that they had there and open sourced that. So massive scale, along with things like flexibility and other things like that, are what drove us to look at OpenStack as an interesting idea.
And one thing that I would add here is that when we were hearing about what OpenStack could be, Rackspace and NASA both stood up and really talked about community and how they wanted to drive a community. And that was one of the other things that caught our attention here, was that they started from the beginning with the intent to build a community around this cloud and this solution. And that also stood out from our perspective.
Agreed, yeah. And so I mentioned July of last year, 2010. Fast forward to 13 months later, that community back then was 20 vendors or so on day one. We're now over 100. There are I think 1,100 developers worldwide and 300 that are actively contributing to the project. For an open source project, many have come and gone. This actually has a lot of the legs behind it, and we actually are now we're now confident. We now have the data that indicates this is something that's got some staying power, and we're actually extremely happy that we were part of it from the beginning. Technically speaking, there's a compute module that's built in, codenamed Nova. So when Rob talks about the technology a little bit in just a second, you might say the word Nova. That's compute. Swift is the codename for storage. The imaging service is referred to as Glance. And those are the things that are baked into the latest release of OpenStack, which is codenamed Cactus, that came out in April of this year. But looking ahead to Diablo, which is slated for September of this year, we're seeing a lot of other projects emerge, like network as a service, volume as a service, authentication, a dashboard is in the works. There's all sorts of other projects that are beginning to become emerged in there from the community. I should note that there are actual participants who actually have hosting businesses. I'll, for example, call out NTT out of Japan. They actually saw the need and said, in our business case, we need to have IPv6 support in this software stack. So they actually picked it up and they did it themselves and contributed back to the community. You see a lot of that sort of community type of behavior happening based on what companies that are in the community, what their business needs are. So I touched on a couple of things. The Amazon APIs and also the Rackspace APIs obviously are supported. There's IPv6 support that I just mentioned. All the major hypervisors are supported as well. So we're seeing this grow and evolve fairly quickly, which is actually a very fantastic thing. So what's Dell actually doing in this space? We've actually delivered the first OpenStack cloud solution to market. Like I said, we've got a leg up since we've been in it for so long. We were doing cloud installs way before it was cool on OpenStack, right? We saw some of the first bits. We were able to install, work, configure, tweak, blow it all away. We have developed tools like the Crowbar tool, which Rob will talk about. But essentially, we've now provided a full reference architecture that says, here's how we do OpenStack here at Dell. We've built software like the Crowbar tool, and we've taken the OpenStack open source software that's available freely today, and then bundled it with services, where we can actually help a customer actually go and implement this in a real live manner on site, starting small and growing to as large as you need it to be. I'm going to take a pause and just talk about Crowbar for a second, and while we'll go into the technical details. But the beauty of Crowbar is actually was born out of necessity. It's a software framework that embodies this DevOps model that says your operations people and your IT people merge those skill sets together, and that's what you got with DevOps. And Crowbar is actually a very flexible software framework that allows you to script codes using script code using a configuration management tool called Chef. Hopefully, a lot of you know who that is, but it comes from ops code, and allows you to write scripts that are configured specifically to your environment. It's a great way to get OpenStack up and running your environment quickly. If you've ever had to install a cloud, I don't think I've ever had to utter that phrase, but if you've ever had to install a cloud, it's not a trivial thing. There's a lot of moving parts, and it can be fairly complex. What we've done with Crowbar is basically made that an automated thing. Anecdotally, what we've heard from customers that were early adopters with OpenStack, it's taken them 2 to 3 days to actually do the full install from bare metal to actually multiple nodes of OpenStack running. We're actually able to deploy a fully functioning OpenStack cloud in a multi-node environment in less than 2 hours. So go from bare metal to a functioning OpenStack cloud using Crowbar. You can get there in 2 hours. And that's really just the beginning. Once you actually have your environment running, and as things change in your environment, which we all know on this team is that your cloud is always going to evolve. There's going to be things that are going to happen. There's going to be adjustments you're going to want to make. Crowbar allows you to have a configuration environment that lets you do that. As new elements get introduced into the environment, Crowbar is aware of these things and can take automated action. If there's a new server in there, guess what? It sees it there. It's just going to deploy it in as another node. If you need to update it with new software, it's capable of understanding that new software is needed and deploying that automatically. So we've done a lot of the work. We're trying to leverage a lot of the experience we've had over the last 13 months into a solution that we can pass on to our customers. And just kind of as a last note before I hand it over to the really interesting stuff that Rob will bring up here that everybody wants to hear, I kind of talk about some of the things that we've done here in this space. We're ecstatic as a company that the community has grown in the vendor space to over 100. When we were a year ago, it was really early. We were pioneers. We're trying to drive and communicate the value to the market of what this powerful software framework and platform could do. I'm really excited that the market in general is starting to understand the potential that OpenStack has. We were the only hardware solution vendor to be a part of the OpenStack announcement back then. A lot of our other partners like Citrix and Rackspace and Intel and AMD, a number of those companies were there as well. But I'm proud to say that we were the only hardware provider that was there since day one. And what that really means is that we've had the most time with it. We've been able to work with it closely for over a year. We've been able to the reference architecture that we're putting out with our solutions has been validated over many iterations. In fact, we've gone in, we've done things, we've gone back, we've made adjustments, and now we feel that we're at kind of an ideal position to where we can say, if you want to build an OpenStack cloud, here's how you do it. The Crowbar tool also is something that we're very proud of as well. In case it hasn't become clear, when we announced it this last July, we've actually open sourced it. So we've actually made it available to the community. You can get it from our GitHub site, and I'll have the link at the very end. But we've made it available to the market at large, and said to the community, pick it up, take a look at it, learn about how it works, develop your own module so you can deploy your own tools, and find a way to customize your own configuration in your environment. We have a customer in the hosting business called DreamHost, who I think might actually be on this call. They've actually picked this up, and they have a storage technology called Ceph, C-E-P-H, that they've started developing a bar client module for Ceph. A few days ago, VMware, actually last week, VMware announced that they are going to write a module for Crowbar to deploy Cloud Foundry, their platform as a service open source offering. And this is exactly the behavior we wanted to foster. Dell's not a sideline viewer, we're a participant. We're in the community, we're in the thick of it. We want to enable open standards. We want to enable our customers to be able to leverage this type of a solution as much as they can. So Crowbar is something you should certainly be looking at, and we'll talk about in some detail here next. And lastly, Rob Hirschfeld, who I've got listed here, is actually going to be talking here for the next 20 minutes or so about the details and the technology. We've got, I'll call them a lot of OpenStack rock stars here at Dell, which a lot of companies can't claim. I'm really happy about this. Bart and George, our cloud evangelist, very vocal. Greg Altos is a little bit more behind the scenes, but really the mad scientist and the genius behind how Crowbar is functioning and how we've deployed a lot of this. But these guys are all generally very well understood and very well regarded in the OpenStack community, and they're Dell folks. And I'm really proud to say that we've got that here. So with that, I think we're going to actually do a quick poll, and I'm going to try and see if we can make that happen. Do you have the poll listed there?
I can fire that up for you if you like.
Yeah, if you could fire that up, that'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you, Lynn. Okay, so there's a poll question that we popped up here, and before we go into what DevOps is and all those sort of things, I'd like to just get your feedback just for a couple of seconds around what DevOps is. Have you heard of it? Do you know what it is? Is it something that you're looking at? Are you, is it a part of your everyday business process? Just take a few seconds and let us know what you think, and then we'll take a look at the results there in a second. All right, Liam, do we need to close it, or how do we do that?
I think we just maybe want to give people maybe 20 more seconds to vote or something like that, and then we'll just close it and we should see the results. I think we've got about 60% of people have voted, and if anyone else wants to vote, we can give them a few seconds, but I think probably we're...
Right, great. And so while you're voting, I'm going to just intro Rob Hirschfeld real quick. Rob Hirschfeld is our principal architect here at Dell on OpenStack in particular. He's presented very often at these OpenStack design summits as well as cloud events. And actually, it's not just one of the architects that lives up in the cloud, if I could say it that way. He actually does come down at the architecture level, does write code and things like that, so it's a very valuable asset to our team. So what I'll do is hand it over to Rob, and we'll go from there.
Okay, I'll close the poll now. Thanks for voting, everyone.
And I'm going to sort of skate the line here. If you love DevOps, hopefully what we're going to tell you is going to ring true. And if you haven't heard of it before, you're probably Googling in the background, which is great. I'm going to more target to the people who are starting to hear about this and understand why it's important. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll start to say, wow, DevOps is really a significant trend. It's really something that I need to consider in my data center. Our experience in working with web hosters is that they have a lot of operational chops. We walk into accounts knowing that. We walk in not expecting that we have the answers and our way to do things is the only way or even the best way. What we found with cloud is that there's a lot of right ways. There's a lot of great ways to do it, and it really fits what your use cases are, what your financial models are, what type of service that you want to provide. And that's really where you're going to choose to differentiate in the market. And so we were doing clouds, hyperscale clouds, before we started with the OpenStack project. A lot of what we're doing here with OpenStack, and the reasons we're so excited about OpenStack is that it addresses needs that we saw in the market, needs that we saw in the technology space that hadn't been addressed, and it also let us bring in what we felt like was missing in the solutions. And this slide really shows what our lessons were, what lessons we had learned before we even sat down with OpenStack and started using it. What we had found was that we could bring hardware to bear in a cloud solution. We could bring software to bear that would run that infrastructure, that would provide an API and would make virtual machines go on and off, right? Do all the things that you needed, provide some type of API to let users do it in an automated fashion. But what was missing was a lot of operational expertise. So we would show up and we would work with our customers and our partners and say, all right, you need to have DNS and DHCP and monitoring and performance management, and you have to have an understanding how the network is VLAN and all these important operational decisions that you had to make to operate a cloud. And that was the more substantial barrier than whether or not we could install the bits on hard drives. And we struggled with that, frankly. It was one of those things where every time we showed up to an account, we had to come back and work with them and talk to them. And that was important, and that dialogue was important. And nothing we're doing is making the importance of understanding how to operate a cloud go away. What we're really doing is accelerating people's ability to get to a point where they can make those decisions based on experience rather than trying to make a whole bunch of guessing and then come back later. So what we've been doing is really chipping away at the amount of operational effort it takes to run a cloud. And what we found is when we start doing that, it's not just a one-time thing. It's not just your out-of-the-box experience where your operational needs of understanding and operating a cloud begin. They're actually a continuous thing, right? Joseph likes to hear me say the cloud is always ready but never finished, right? When we work with a customer about cloud deployments, it's not a one-time thank you, here's your cloud, we'll give you the keys and you walk away. It's an ongoing operational environment. A cloud has updates for software. There's always something going on in it. You have to have an operational model which embraces that, which is really where we found DevOps to be a very, very powerful story. DevOps is something that has emerged in cloud deployments, both in the hyperscale data centers for managing thousands and thousands of nodes, but also in the web application deployments where it's all virtualized nodes and it's an extremely dynamic environment with a lot of elasticity and the machines come and go and you can't really touch them. DevOps really works to automate the whole process of managing your system. So from where the code is created all the way through to the actual deployment of that code and then the management of that is really what DevOps is talking about. And it takes all of that operational knowledge and it encodes it as software. And fundamentally what Crowbar does is it takes all of that deployment expertise, all of that really complex logic, everything that you need to automate, to manage your cloud in a sustainable way, and it helps code it into software. Crowbar, out of the box, has a tremendous amount of operational knowledge baked into it. And what we've done with that is allowed you to get up and running in a matter of hours, because a lot of the basic decisions and the basic integrations that we know you want are already in it. So, for example, when we deploy a Nova system, we actually will analyze the environment and make sure that we put the appropriate pieces of Nova, the Nova compute. So there's an administrative sort of controlling system, and then there's compute nodes that actually run the VMs. All those things have to have good places and homes. They have to be integrated in with the image cache system. They have to have an API server. They have to have monitoring so that you know that that API server is still working. We do all that. That is part of how the system operates. And what we do is we leverage another open source product called Chef, which is by a company called Opscode. So we actually deploy a Chef server in the environment, in the cloud environment, so that you can manage all of the node deployments. But we don't expect that you're going to take that Chef server and never touch it, right? We expect that as your cloud grows and matures and as you learn how to operate it, you're going to start making substitutions. You might choose to use a different monitoring tool than the one that we included out of the box, which is Nagios. So that's a perfectly intelligent decision to make. It's an operational decision that has to support your environment. So you can pull that capability out and then reintegrate in whatever monitoring solution you want to use. And when you make that decision, you can then redeploy the cloud or update the cloud to account for all those things. And one of the things that we've done, and this slide talks about open sourcing and bar clamps, one of the core tenets of DevOps, one of the core tenets of how we're approaching the solution is there is no single one image that we hand over that is the pristine OpenStack image. Cloud's too complex for that. So what we do is we do a DevOps-style layered deployment. So we have an operating system build, and we have NTP as an add-on. The DNS registration takes place. Whatever pieces and parts, Node.js and Ganglia come in from monitoring. All the pieces come in as layers. It's independent modules. In Chef, they're called cookbooks, if you're familiar with that DevOps tool. For Crowbar, we take those cookbooks and we wrap them in bar clamps because the bar clamp allows us to do some really interesting work beyond that. What we let the bar clamp do is it actually can prepare the machine for the cookbooks and recipes. So it can do the BIOS and the RAID configurations to make sure that the node that you're bringing up matches its intended purpose. And if that purpose changes, you can change its configuration. And then the bar clamps also let the system come together as a system. So before you apply a bar clamp, you actually have a chance to go in and say, well, you know what, I don't want 10 nodes of Nova Compute. I'm saving some of those nodes. I only want 4. And you can make changes like that. You can say, I don't want this node to be the controller. I want a different node to be the controller. So what we've really done is take a lot of the trouble of trying to figure out the system and view it as a system, and we've made that much easier to do. And then the bar clamps allow you to bring in all the extra components that might operate your cloud that are different than our reference architecture and bring those in. And we want that to happen. That's why we open source the tool, because we want our community, we want our partners to come in with these capabilities and plug them into the cloud, because really the cloud is about a collection of all these services.
Right, and that's a great point, Rob, which is, and we mentioned this notion of the bar clamp, and it's that whole tool analogy that we're going to continue to move, the crowbars and bar clamps and things like that. But the simplest way, hopefully this diagram can convey it, the crowbar has this core platform, but then there are these bar clamps, which are modules that execute a function. So if you want to deploy OpenStack Compute, there's a bar clamp that does that. If you want to deploy OpenStack Storage, there's a bar clamp that does that. If you want to do a BIOS update, there's a bar clamp that can do that. And the beauty of that is that since it's based on Chef, and since it's open source, we now give you the power to be able to write your own bar clamps for your specific environment, right? And that's where, and we'll get to DreamHost a little bit later here, but that's what the power of this tool is that gives you that flexibility.
And there's a significant community already around Chef, and all of the cookbooks that are in that community you can leverage in this environment. So we didn't, we're really proud of what we've done with Crowbar. We're really excited to see the community response from it and the people who are out using it and deploying it, pulling it off the open source and running their own clouds, which is just fantastic to see. That is something that we feel like is the way we want to approach the cloud. So I'm waiting for the, okay, so a little bit about what Crowbar does, deep dive technical. So Crowbar goes through this process. I like to describe, it's a gross simplification, and I can make Greg Althouse cringe every time I say this. It's a Pixie state machine. So in the simplest terms, what we're doing is we have a state machine that decides how the system should be configured. That's a very simplified version of that is in here, where as a system boots, it's discovered into the network. We review what the capability of that is. You make some choices about how you want it configured. We actually don't do anything to it until the operators make a decision, so you don't waste time with a BIOS or a RAID configuration that you're going to throw away when you actually allocate the node. And then we deploy the personalities into the system. So we'll build out an operating system. Today we're using Ubuntu. Our new solution coming out on Crowbar is going to be a Red Hat, a RHEL-based system. So there's a lot of flexibility here, but then we actually build up the layers of that deployment. So as you modify the system, as you grow your capabilities, those nodes come up customized to your environment. And because of the way we do our deployments, you can go through a cycle, a sort of a learning cycle with the system to tune it to your environment. You never have to go in and manually configure the nodes. You actually can rebuild the entire system and do it. And this was born out of our experience with cloud deployments, where we would do a cloud deployment, get it working, make sure everything was right, and then we'd flush and reset the system and make sure that we had an automated, scripted way to do it. This is inherent in how we expect Crowbar to operate. So I wanted to show, give you a little show for what Crowbar looks like. This is what the Dell version of it looks like. The only difference with the Dell version and the open source version is that we put some Dell colors in it, which makes everybody around here feel comfortable. So this is showing you our dashboard with a zoom in on detail for one node. The idea is that the system actually discovers the network topology as it does deployments so that you can account for that in your codebooks and scripts, which means that you can make decisions that avoid fault zones in automated deployments. For you, those of you who have done designs for big deployments, it's a big deal. It's a really nice feature to have. And that's what these nodes are showing. So at the top of that green circle is the switch, and then under that are all the nodes that are in that switch configuration. And then I've clicked on one of those in this screenshot, and it actually shows you how much detail there is. How much detail there is behind the scenes for each node. And this is actually a tiny fraction of what the system actually collects. It uses Chef's Ohio system, and it produces a tremendous amount of data. So we can come in and make decisions that are incredibly detailed, even down to the asset tag number or the number of drives or how the drives are configured in what that system does. And then if it's not right in your environment, you can switch it. So if you had built a system assuming that RAID 6 was adequate performance and you found that you needed RAID 10, you can change the BIOS, the RAID configurations and rebuild your environment, right? Or vice versa, if you needed more capacity. So those things are really important. The next view here it comes. And the purpose of showing the bar clamps is I really want to reinforce how many different modules and capabilities are in the system as a default. In this case, this is actually showing the Nova already being deployed. You notice that you can have multiple bar clamp deployed multiple times. So we have a proposal concept where you decide how that bar clamp is going to be deployed, and then you can do it. You can make multiple passes at doing it, or you can deploy different nodes in different ways. It's very, very flexible from that perspective. But it's important to understand that we've really broken the pieces of the system into modules. In part because we want to encourage the community to take ownership of individual modules, but also because that has been our philosophy for trying to make the system highly configurable and very DevOps friendly. Even the core state machine that runs Crowbar is exposed as a bar clamp. So the ability to come in and do all these things is really powerful. We've worked hard to keep it simple at the same time so that you can, if you just want to get the system up and running in 2 hours and deploy Nova, you can certainly do that, take the defaults, and the system will come up and show you how it's operating. So this screen really shows that, and we're about to add a lot more bar clamps as we bring up Diablo, which Diablo, for people who aren't familiar with OpenStack, is the next release with some really exciting capabilities just was alluding to with that. Is it? Okay.
So real quick, this is Joseph. I'm going to take it back. And actually, Liam, I don't know if you're still in the line. Maybe we can share some of the poll results.
I can do that.
To see what how our audience answer that question.
I certainly can.
And as Liam's bringing that up, I'd recommend, and the next slide will have a link to the GitHub site. But the UIs that you saw, the colors are a little different, I think, is the only difference there. But you can actually go to the GitHub site and actually get the, get the actual bits downloaded and actually install it yourself.
We have some videos that explain how to do it.
Yes.
You can do it on top of a virtualized environment. Yeah, you could.
That's right.
You can very quickly come in, play with OpenStack, get it running on a single virtualized environment with multiple nodes, and really kick the tires. which is what our goal is, right? We don't want to talk about OpenStack. We want to do OpenStack.
Okay, I'm going to hide these poll results, guys.
Okay, well, Liam, while you're doing that, I don't see it on the screen, so let me talk a little bit about DreamHost. DreamHost is actually a web hoster off the West Coast here in the States, and the day that we announced our OpenStack cloud solution, DreamHost was our reference customer on the day of our announcement. They actually are very active in the OpenStack community. They're a very highly regarded web hosting company. And they're big believers in what we're doing with our architecture and with our Crowbar software framework. So this is a company that's actually fully embodying what we're trying to accomplish here with our web hosting customers, which is to get in, be able to take advantage of the OpenStack technology as a service, and use the Crowbar software framework that we've developed to configure and enhance and continually evolve your environment. But at the same time, also be able to develop bar clamps of their own to be able to deploy services and tools and functionality that they need to take advantage of. And we do have a full case study available. This is just a one-slide version of it, but we do have a full case study available if anybody is interested in taking a look at that. Okay, I guess we were having some trouble with the poll results, so let's go ahead and move on. And what I want to make sure that everybody's aware, there is a question and answer module that's in your console there. Feel free to post some questions. We're going to save plenty of time here for our experts, namely Rob, to be able to answer questions that you might have. And we're willing to go as technical as you'd like and get into the deep technical aspects of this. But a couple of resources that would be useful to you as you're going forward if you're interested in learning a little bit more. The Dell.com/OpenStack site is a great place to get some of this information. It has information about Crowbar, about our reference architecture, about our entire solution that's available from Dell. And then also there is an interesting white paper that's out there called Bootstrapping OpenStack Clouds. You probably saw a screenshot of it on one of my earlier slides. That's a white paper that has been authored by Rob Hirschfeld and Greg Althaus, and also has had some input from various other folks in the community in OpenStack. But it's a nice technical white paper. I think it's about 15 pages long of how you design OpenStack in a hyperscale environment. Great deep dive design elements there. So I recommend you go download it and take a look. Also, the Dell Crowbar software that we've been talking about throughout this webinar here today is available open source at our GitHub site, github.com/DellCloudEdge. So those are strong sites that would be of interest to you. I'm going to jump down to the blogs for just a second. Rob and I are actually pretty active on both our blog as well as on Twitter. You can use the OpenStack hashtag. You can use the Dell hashtag. You can use the Crowbar hashtag, and we'll usually be able to find you and have some discussions out there. If you'd like to follow what we're seeing in terms of OpenStack news, what's coming from Dell, some of our great customer feedback that we're getting is all available out there. Barton George has been our Dell Cloud evangelist and actually is now our Director of Marketing for Web 2.0 technologies. But he's very active and very well regarded in the blogosphere, very heavy blogger around what we're doing in the OpenStack space. So I'd recommend regularly going out there. I do want to highlight Rob's blog as a place if you're interested about technical aspects around Crowbar in terms of how you actually build the scripts together, videos on how you actually use this. Rob's blog, robhirschfeld.com, often has a lot of really deep technical insight into what we're doing and how we're doing it. And then finally, if you'd like more information on on getting more information from Dell around what we're doing around OpenStack, and in particular the Dell OpenStack Cloud Solution offering that we have made up of that reference architecture, our Crowbar software and OpenStack, and then services that we can offer you, drop us an email at openstack@dell.com. That's an email address that I check regularly, that we also have numerous people here from Dell on top of. So if you have questions, if you feel like this is a a fit for you, and you'd like to maybe talk a little bit more detail, then happy to entertain any questions that we have there. So with that, Liam, I'm going to hand it back over to you, and maybe there are a few questions that have come through our question and answer screen, and maybe we can field a couple of those.
Great. I've got a couple of questions from the crowd here,
Okay.
and I think there may have been a hiccup earlier because I did share the poll results while you were talking there, but they may not have shown up for you guys. I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay. Great.
So I guess the first question we have from the audience is somebody wanted to know if you guys have a timeline for Red Hat Enterprise Linux support. I'm assuming they mean within Crowbar and the whole stack.
Yeah, we're still looking at it right now. We also launched a solution around Hadoop that we just announced a couple of weeks ago, and we do have RHEL integration there for that solution. We're evaluating right now the effort required to put RHEL together. We have engineers working on that support. I think we're looking for something by the end of the year to have that support in. But let me just say that we are extremely customer driven. So if we see the response that there is a need for something like that, we will be driven by that. So if you've got a request for Red Hat support in OpenStack, the OpenStack Cloud solution, just send it our way.
So yeah, I want to distinguish the Crowbar open source solution will have the Red Hat add that we've been working on. The open source, the OpenStack running on RHEL is something that we'll do best effort on, but we're focused on continuing the Ubuntu support first. We're looking for community partners. It's certainly the type of thing we're going to be doing this development in the open, and people are welcome to participate.
That's a good point. If anybody on the line is interested in working with us on developing some of the RHEL capabilities, feel free to reach out as well. Good question.
Okay, let me ask you this, and I know this is a very broad, very general question, but I think I'm very interested in sort of what led Dell, and maybe this is a philosophical thing, but what led Dell to get involved in OpenStack in the first place?
Yeah, great question, and it is somewhat philosophical, but I think it has to do with ultimately has to do with experience. The portfolio that we have here at Dell regarding cloud technologies has allowed us to be in a number of instances where customers have been trying to put these type of technologies together. We've got a lot of experience outside of Dell in terms of the folks that are on this team in terms of cloud technologies. I think what we saw, what was happening with OpenStack, and we saw what the initiative was behind it, right? What was the purpose was to drive standards, to provide customers and users a way to be able to build cloud, in a collaborative fashion with an ecosystem of partners, best-of-class vendors. When we saw these characteristics kind of emerging, it caught our eye, and I remember us going to our leadership and saying, look, there's this thing bubbling with this thing called OpenStack. It's got a lot of the pieces in there that we think would be beneficial in terms of an open source, massively scaled cloud solution. We should get in on that. So I would say it was somewhat philosophical. I would say that it also was just based on experience. We saw the characteristics of what we knew a cloud solution would need.
And speaking as a technology guy with bits under my fingernails, I love being able to fix stuff if it's not right, and then contribute it back and keep going. And this is happening with OpenStack. It's a big deal.
And I think that's an interesting aspect of this too. I think there was a lot of emphasis put on community regarding this initiative. It wasn't just about open source and then throw it out there and let's see what people can do. It actually is actively, the leadership that's in the OpenStack, communities and committees are actively engaging, partners in the community and developers in the community to have a hand in developing it. So what we're seeing coming out of Diablo is probably one of the best examples in recent history of a community working together to provide features and functionality into one of these bases here. So, I think we liked a lot about what we saw with the OpenStack in terms of the OpenStack software, in terms of technology. We liked what we saw in terms of the community and support. And we'd been around enough cloud technologies to see that this was something that was interesting. The group that we come out of is actually the data center solutions team here at Dell. And if you're not familiar with this DCS team, that was a team that was chartered on building cloud environments and hyperscale environments for some of the biggest companies in the world, many of them in the service provider and hosting markets. Microsoft Azure, Facebook, those are the type of people that we were building custom clouds for. So it's that heritage that has helped us come back to figuring out what our technologies we want to spend our investment time on and help our customers get enabled on.
Okay, I have a couple questions that are sort of based on your answer to that question. So I don't know which one is preferable to ask first, but you kind of stressed how much OpenStack was focused on the community, and I'm kind of interested in how you guys see the role that a hardware maker plays in the community around a piece of open source software.
So it's a solution for us. What we want to do is make sure that people can deploy the cloud. And that's actually the piece that we wanted to bite off when we looked at OpenStack. Because I'm not in trying to modify the Nova compute layer and the scheduler. Those are part of the core software infrastructure for Nova. What we really saw us being able to add value in is helping somebody get this deployed. So taking the hardware that we had and making it super easy to use, but all the way through. So I think we have a lot to add there because those are important. Actually using the system is significant. That's important.
Yeah, and I would add that what Dell's trying to do is transform into a solutions company. This is, and I think this is one of the true test cases of us actually doing this, leading in a space where obviously we have fantastic hardware. We've got a lot of history that has led to the fantastic hardware we put together. But as we all know, it never ends with hardware, right? You're buying hardware for a reason, and that's where Dell wants to participate in the journey with our customers. Is what are you trying to use this for? And we want to deliver solutions to you. If you're trying to build a cloud, we want to build a solution that will enable you to build that cloud, not just the hardware. But we want to provide you software. We want to provide the services to be able to help get you where you need to go. And we don't want to be just a bystander. We want to be a participant.
And this is where us embracing DevOps and trying to do open operations and cloud operations, all those things are really taking it to another level. It's really a solutions focus for us.
Yeah.
All right. I hope that answered the question.
I think it did, yeah. So I guess you also mentioned that the next release, the Diablo release of OpenStack is very exciting to you guys, and I think you've mentioned it several times. I'm curious if there are any specific elements of Diablo that you think are most exciting.
Wow. Yes. Keystone, of course, is a big deal because it really helps create, not just bring together the pieces that are there, but create a way that all of the pieces can share security models. The other thing that we're really excited about is some of the networking changes that really enable OpenStack and really any of the commercially available cloud solutions or available cloud solutions to bust the top of the networking hurdles. So if you look at some of the things that are going on in Diablo from a networking perspective, there's some great technologies coming in, really thought out on how we're going to scale these clouds. And I know, because I'm watching the thread, the innovation is there. There's a lot of stuff that's not going to make it to Diablo, but it's coming really soon after that. And so the pace of this is just going like crazy.
So Keystone is the authentication piece.
Keystone is the centralized authentication piece. And there's a couple of different pieces that all come together to provide the networking.
Right. Yeah, so I think this is this is an exciting release for it. This would be the fourth release full release that that OpenStack has put out since we announced. There's been Austin, Bear, and Cactus to this point. I think a lot of the community is looking at Diablo as a real key test point to see what we can deploy out. We've actually deployed a number of customers already with our OpenStack solution to date. But there are a number of new features that are coming out in Diablo that I think a lot of our customers are anxiously waiting for: authentication, dashboard, things like that.
And you'll see, I'll be doing analysis on my blog about what I think the important features are and which ones we're going to focus on supporting first.
Yeah. And every OpenStack Design Summit that we've actually been a part of, every single one, and we expect to showcase some of this off at the next one here in October, which will be in Boston the week of October 3rd.
Okay. And do you have a sense for, I mean, I'm assuming you do, but do you have a sense for long-term where the OpenStack community and the OpenStack project is going?
Yeah, I think, this is, I got to say, if you ask anybody that's in the OpenStack community, of course we all knew that this had there was something unique and special about what was happening with OpenStack. But I think we were all pleasantly surprised about how much traction it's picked up. We've got some big players, including Dell, that are now supportive of it. I think a lot of it's going to hinge on how much adoption and how much development we're going to see on the code over the next 6 months. I personally think that this is going to help drive some standards in the community around an open cloud technologies. What we've also seen is, in addition to partners and developers and folks like that coming to the fold, to this point, we're already starting to see other open type initiatives that are happening. I mentioned Cloud Foundry as a great example of, they're using our Crowbar technology, but despite that, they're doing an open source platform as a service offering that's available. Dell is obviously involved in what we're doing in the open compute space. So there's a lot of these type of open initiatives that are happening, and I can't help but think that what we're doing with OpenStack is helping drive some of that. We have high hopes for OpenStack. We obviously limit the amount of technologies that we're trying to move forward here in the OpenStack space. I'm sorry, in the cloud space. We obviously have invested heavily in OpenStack. We've been a partnership at the beginning. I know we have high hopes as to where it can go.
I'll give you a technical answer. What we already see is a lot of as-a-service capabilities, database, load balancer, network. We really see that this is going to enable a lot more services capabilities to build on a common infrastructure. So I think you're going to see a lot more interesting products coming into the market, both open and commercial.
Okay. So for somebody who's looking to deploy and operate OpenStack or a cloud based on OpenStack, I guess, and let's focus this on hosting providers, what's sort of the biggest barrier to operating OpenStack at scale?
It's really building the expertise at this point. I think there are pieces for the technology that are coming out and emerging that are going to help operate it at scale, and we're going to keep putting those pieces in place. The philosophy we took when we built this was the biggest barrier was learning, and learning how to operate the cloud and getting your environment, getting it to match what your environmental needs were, which is why we took this approach. We didn't try and get to a 1,000-node system first. We got to a 6 and then a 60-node system because we felt people needed to start learning and using. And that's the biggest barrier.
Yeah, and I would probably add that, in addition to that, now that we're kind of a year into it, and we're all still learning, right, as new features come out, actually the Rackspace Cloud Builders, who actually has a big services organization on OpenStack, just made an announcement yesterday. Was it yesterday or the day before? Sometime this week, where they actually said they've actually started offering training classes available around OpenStack. So how to deploy it, how to manage it, what it actually does, what is Nova, what is Swift, what is Glance, what is Keystone, all these sort of things. And we actually will be hosting one of those trainings at Dell here in Austin in the month of October. So I think right now the barrier, I don't believe that there is a technology barrier yet. I think we are already starting to see customers deploy this in some production type environments. So I don't think there's a barrier here in that sense. But as Rob and I have been saying throughout this webinar, the cloud is about operations. It's not something we believe you just drop in an environment and just let it go. You push a button and it's gone. It's something about you understanding how your cloud works, how you want it to work, and being a part of how that works. And I think getting educated on how to do that is gonna really help drive some adoption here in this space.
Okay. Well, we're about 2 minutes away from the hour, and I got another question actually that it's interesting that you brought up cloud builders because it came up right before you started talking about that. But I know you said you were involved in the new educational component of that, which I think they announced that today. But anyway, the question was, how does Dell's sort of professional services related to OpenStack, where do they diverge from Rackspace's, and maybe I would add, where are they, where do they overlap? Because I know that you guys are involved in some of those things.
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, we view Rackspace right now as one of the premier experts, Rackspace Cloud Builders in particular, as one of the experts in OpenStack. They're actively doing live deployments. They're actively going on site, getting OpenStack Cloud stood up, and a lot of the customers that we've engaged with are leveraging Rackspace Cloud Builders to actually do this. So to break it down, Dell services, anything that's related to what we're actually doing on site, going and doing deployment, we're involved with all of it. In fact, the first phone call when you partner with Dell on an OpenStack solution, that first phone call is always going to come to Dell. It's not going to any other partner. As we add other partners into the mix, whether they're services or software, the business that we are doing is with our customers directly. We're not going to pass it off. So that's the first I want to be clear. Dell services will be the project management folks on those engagements. They will be the ones that are actually deploying OpenStack live into your environment. They'll be the ones that will be training you on the Crowbar tool and how you build that together. They'll help with consulting on how this needs to be laid out. At this point, since OpenStack is so new and still so so dynamic, we're looking to Rackspace Cloud Builders to help us support the software stack that is changing constantly. So they provide support, they help deliver training, and they provide some level of consulting as well. We view them as a strategic partner. They're a big part of what we do, and especially at this point in where the OpenStack community and technology is at, they're obviously seen as some of the experts that are in the industry.
Okay, well, I think it's 2 o'clock right now. I think with if you guys are all right with that, I think we might make a good note to wrap things up on.
Sure, great.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say, thanks a lot, Liam. Appreciate you having us on here.
You hosting.
And appreciate everybody for joining us here today. This is, and I'll leave these resources up. Feel free to reach out to us if there's any interest at all.
Yeah, send the conversation. We're happy to chat.
Okay, well, I just wanted, before we go, thank everyone for attending, and for those of you who submitted questions, thank you very much for that. Of course, I'd like to thank Joseph and Rob for offering I think, some pretty great insight into something that is obviously of a lot of concern to a lot of hosting providers today, so it was really good stuff, and I do appreciate it.